The Titans did a spot-on impression of the Oilers and lost at the last second to the Texans. We're going to talk about that and more on this edition of The Bullpen.
To throw the punches on. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Tagged down for a Texan touchdown.
Hello, and welcome to The Bullpen. I am James Roy. This is Tom Chavarria, and I have a new mic. I'll just get that out of the way right from the start. If the audio is not good, this is a test, and if it's not going well, I'm sorry. But with that in mind, or I guess get that out of your mind, you might not be able to. But the Texans beat the Oilers, or should I say, the Titans dressed as the Oilers in epic fashion. Overtime, last second, the end of overtime. It was a win-win situation for the Texans in a lot of ways because it was, win or tie. There wasn't really a way they lost at the end of that game, but Kemi Fairbairn came through, won the game. The Texans are now in a three-way tie for first in the AFC South. How does that feel? And looking ahead, do you think the Texans have a strong case for AFC South champions?
I feel amazing. I just, the one thing that kills me, every intro, I died just a little bit inside because I get to see CJ to Tank, and it just brings it all back. Like I love that video. And,
do you want me to change it, Tom?
I don't want you to change it.
Okay.
But I have to get over it and then get back to work. But it's like watching it goes, man, can you imagine they won this game with neither of those guys? Like that's where I'm going to start. When you look at the walk-in wounded that was the Houston Texans, for them to go into Tennessee, a team just coming off of a huge win against Miami, who looks unbeatable 9 times out of 10 times, the one time being that game, I don't know how they got it. And then from where they came, the way the game started, I don't know how they got it done. I'm super proud, super pumped to this team. I cannot wait till the boys get healthy as they can. Because, there's just so much grit and grind with this team. I don't want to steal the Memphis Grizzlies MO. They're not that anymore, but that's what I think of when I think of the Texans. They're very gritty and they grind out these wins that they probably shouldn't have had. And they're in a great position to A, win a division, and B, make the playoffs.
I 100% agree. And side note, I lived in Memphis for most of the grit and grind era. So that city takes that really seriously, and I think to some extent still feels like they have that. They may be the second coming with Ja Morant, but there's all kinds going. Well, this isn't a basketball podcast, so I'm going to leave it at that. But this win, it comes with the theme, or it's in line with the theme of the season for the Texans, which is just, hey guys, let's make this win as stressful as possible. There's that one meme where it's like, hey, look, I'm going to watch my favorite football team play. I want to die. And then, oh, wow, the Texans won. Do you think that I may have asked you this question before, but I'm going to ask it again. Do you think that watching this game gives you a lot of confidence in what the Texans will look like, even with CJ and Nico back going into a playoff game?
Watching this game and watching this team all season long gives me utmost confidence in that. Utmost confidence in what they're building. You think about some of the great teams, the Patriots when they were at their height, the Chiefs when they were at their height. They won games like this. They won games they weren't supposed to win. They won games without guys. And then you look up and here they are in a postseason, playing somebody tooth and nail. And this experience is so invaluable. Being on the right side of it, it just makes you feel like, hey, we can do this. Hey, we've been there. Those are things that you can't coach, you can't teach. You have to experience. You have to go through those wars and come out the other side. And for the Texans to be able to do it in year one of this, if you still want to call it a rebuild, I can't tell you how valuable I feel like this experience is for them going forward, for the team, for the coaching staff, for everybody to just have that, that intestinal fortitude, if you will, to be able to come out on the other side of these games where the fan base is just stressed out the entire time. knees tapping, nail biting the whole way through, and really just hoping that they get it done. But now I think as we go forward, you're going to see fans go, nah, this has been all season. We're good. Down 3 minutes left, fourth quarter. Where's James Roy with his patented storybook ending? We're good.
No doubt. And just to speak to this team's resilience, we talked about it this past week, and I said, there's only so far next man up can go. CJ is a huge loss, and how does this team look? And to the credit of those on Twitter that were saying this, there was a lot of people that were like, guys, we're playing the Titans. Why are we giving them that much respect? And I don't feel like I was respecting the Titans so much as just trying to be realistic about what the Texans were bringing to the table. It's not really a disservice to either team to say that in a division matchup, regardless of who's there or not, there's reason for concern on if you can win just based off of that rivalry and the any given Sunday atmosphere in the division. But to that point, I think maybe everyone, myself included, may have overstated the loss of CJ Stroud to the offense. That's not to say that he wasn't missed. Case Keenum just, game managed and against a better opponent like the Texans will face next week. And if you want to tune in later this week, we're going to talk about the Texans matchup with the Browns. I think CJ coming back next week is going to be super important, but for a game against the Titans, Case Keenum did enough. Now let's talk about the offense. Noah Brown. That's what I want to talk about first. Because there was a lot of talk about it being flash in the pan, 250-yard receiving games, Noah Brown, he does that sometimes. Do you think that's still the case? Can we say that he does that sometimes, or maybe it was a recovery from injury? Because Noah Brown was the lifeblood of this receiving room today, and one of the big reasons that the Texans ended up winning the game.
I think when you look at skill positions and soft tissue injuries, they just take a long time for those guys. They're so athletic and so shifty that when you have a hamstring to a wide receiver, it's really easy to go, oh, that was just a flash in the pan, and not realize that it takes them a long time to get back into top flight game shape. And I think that's really what happened with Noah Brown. When you look at the way he played this game, I want to say he was still somewhat limited throughout practice or whatever leading up into the game, but then went and he looked like exactly like the dude that was ripping off 100-yard games week after week when some of the other guys were down. And I really feel like when you saw some of the routes that he ran, if you watch the game, I think this guy can be a legit number 2 if they're not moving on from him to look for bigger and better. I really like the way he presented himself, made a big, huge target for Case Keenum, and really became his security blanket. He went to him anytime he needed a big play.
One thing I'll say about Noah Brown, I loved what he did, and I do think that he made strides to improve. I hate looking back on games that went horribly, but one thing that I will say I noticed is that his separation in this game against a not good Titan secondary was probably a lot of what helped Case find him. Whereas last week against the Jets, it felt like every time he was targeted, that a defender was right there. So I think his performance last week can probably be written off to the Jets defense, and I'm interested to see how he looks, whether or not Nico's available next week against the Browns in a defense that has shown to be really good, if he can get that separation and continue to perform. Because if he doesn't, I think that's just indicative of him not being able to perform against good defenses. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
I mean, next week is a huge test. You're going to know a lot about this football team with what they're able to do with the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have been a top flight defense all season long. They've had a similar deal with all their injuries, and their defense has just been rock solid. So if they can move the football against this defense, which some of the better teams that they've played, San Francisco to name one, has not been able to move the football that well, it's going to say a lot about what I guess Bobby Slowick and that receiving core and whoever lines up under center is doing with this offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. 100%. Now, looking at other receivers in this receiving core, We don't really get much. You can say that Xavier Hutchinson moved the ball more through penalties than most other receivers did just through receptions, with those 2 PIs that he drew. But looking at the tight end position in Dalton Schultz, first half kind of went ghost. I think he had 1 target. It was a little overthrown. Second half, Dalton Schultz was also a very key part to winning this game. And I'm going to mention it because it's really the most notable part of his performance. He literally saved an interception. Case Keenum's stat line goes from like 230 yards, a touchdown and an interception, to 220 yards and 2 interceptions on that play alone. Like, what do you make of that? I've watched it from several angles, and honestly, I don't know how he came up with the ball.
What I take from that play is the Houston Texans need to extend Dalton Schultz long term, lock this guy up. He just wanted it more. Like, when you saw that play, it was an interception until Dalton Schultz, and he tweeted it out. You thought, and he went and stole the ball. So that right there, I love everything about the play. Love everything about him as a receiving option from the tight end spot. I think as talented as Ferguson is for Dallas, I think they made a mistake letting Dalton Schultz get out of town, and I think it's going to be to the Texans' benefit if they're able to extend him long term. I think he played great. I can't complain about the targets he didn't get if we're talking about drop balls or stuff like that. But when they found him, he was a chain mover. And I think in this offense, that spot's going to be so key because you got guys that can stretch the field in Tank Dell and Nico. When you've got that intermediate threat in Dalton, the sky's the limit for this group. And I think he needs to be a permanent fixture, at least for the next 2-3 years, whatever, of this Texan team.
There are some big names going into free agency this year. Dalton Schultz is one of them. The other one's Kaimi Fairbairn, Devin Singletary, and there's one other one that's eluding me. Jonathan Grenard. Those are 4 big names that are going to be free agents this offseason. Just because it's related, I want to ask you, and I'm going to segue into our discussion of Devin Singletary's day. Of those 4 players, which 2, assuming there's only 2 we can re-sign, I mean, I don't know how they're going to work the cap, but which 2 are the most vital re-signings of that group?
For me, it has to be Jonathan Grenard and Dalton Schultz. I think I would love to keep Devin Singletary long term. However, he may come at a cost that I don't want to pay for a 27, 28-year-old running back. You know, when they hit 30, that's the number. Yeah, it's over. So, I mean, you tweeted out during the game, what's the running back draft situation looking like? And then it's almost like Devin Singletary heard you and went ham after, because I wanted to tweet back at you and I was like, nah, I'll leave it alone. I won't mess with it. Singletary answered it for him.
I got some flack for that tweet, and I'll agree with you. Devin Singletary's up there, and I think he's a good option at the right price. That tweet was not directed at Devin Singletary. It was basically spawned from a tweet I saw from John Crumpler that said, it's kind of awful when your running back room is this thin that Dare Ogunbowale is taking meaningful passing or pass catching snaps this early in a football game. And so I, playing off that, looked and was like, Dameon Pierce has kind of, not jived with this offense. I don't think it's a skill level thing. I think it's just this offense and some poor O-line play early on. And then Dario Ogunbowale and Mike Boone, sure. But there has to be a move to get some depth in there. I would assume you're bringing back Devin Singletary if the price is right. You just have to find someone to, when you look at a running back rooms that are good, that are 3-headed, 2-headed monsters, one of the guys at least is a gadget guy, and all of our gadget guys in that room just aren't exceptionally great at the things they come in to do. Looking at a Chris Johnson and Lendale White, since we're talking about the Titans, where you have Chris Johnson, CJ2K, Burnham, put it under, and then Lendale White, it's 3rd and 1, who you turn to, Lendale White, so looking for the Lendale White to what Devin Singletary is, and I'm not saying Devin Singletary is Chris Johnson, but he's played exceptionally well outside the tackles, and I think that finding that bruiser that we want Dameon Pierce to be would be beneficial. Looking at the free agent signings, though, I can't not feature Kaimi Fairbairn in that list of two that are most important. It's hard.
You just like to say his name, his whole name.
I love it. I wish I could say the whole name. I type it out a lot. I feel like it's Patrick Stormspit. And Patrick, if you're listening, I didn't mean to steal that from you. I'll give credit where credit's due. That's all you. But looking at that list, so to me, Fairbairn's a lock. After what we saw from Amendola and how many close games, I'd say we lost out on 2 wins just by not having Kaimi Fairbairn on the team for that stretch. I could say that at least 1 with confidence, 2 definitely is a possibility. So I have to believe that he's one of the re-signings. He's one of the 10 most accurate kickers in NFL history. I'd have trouble believing they let him walk, especially after how much his value showed in that stretch where he was out. I have mad love for Jonathan Grenard. I have trouble believing the Texans don't need him to be on the team, because at worst case, if he produces at the level he did when he led the team in sacks with 8 sacks a few years back, like that to me is needed in this D-line that we've talked about. The interior needs help. People have said there needs to be depth in the pass rushing game, and we picked up Derek Barnett, who showed up. I think that it'd be a crime to let Jonathan Grenard, a known commodity, walk. So if I'm picking, I think the tight end position is a little easier to tinker with. I don't want to say that Dalton Schultz is not valuable. If I could pick, I'd pick 3, and I would just, Devin Singletary would be the odd man out. But I think all 4 have a case to be re-signed to the team. And if I'm saying it right now, I'm going Fairbairn and Grenard for sure. That's from my end. But that segues into our next discussion, which is Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary had a game. We already talked briefly about how my tweet motivated him to have a good game. I'll take full credit for that. Make sure if you want to Venmo me for my contributions to, no, I'm just kidding. But Singletary's great. And we've seen it all year. I know that your boy, Dameon Pierce, as I always refer to him as, we both want him to be really good.
I want to speak to that when you're done.
Okay, I'll hand it to you here in a second. Devin Singletary, 120 yards rushing. Do you think he was the most valuable performance today, or do you think that there was another player that stood out more to you?
I mean, you spoke about Kaimi Fairbairn. I don't know how you win that game without him, because they had to kick all those field goals.
53 and 54 yards is where I put Kaimi on the list as the MVP.
I mean, it's hard to look away from that. Singletary definitely, if it's not 1 and 1A, I really can't say enough about Singletary, because, I mean, he made some amazing runs, really shifty cuts. I mean, I thought that the Texans blocked really well for him. I know nobody's going to want to hear that, but there were some holes that they opened, and that'll let me segue into the Dameon Pierce stuff. I don't think that he's not the bruiser that the Texans need. They've not asked him to do that. It's not been a 3rd and 1 and they needed 1 yard and they brought him in. We're talking about Daria Bungawale being on the field because it's 3rd and 15. Because it's not a short yard situation. They were penalized a ton. I think that Singletary got the early down work, and rightfully so, but the late down work was all behind the sticks. So where do you put Pierce? People want to point the finger, but it's like, I don't know what he was supposed to do if you want that guy, the short yardage guy, the bruiser. The game didn't call for it. So I get it. We didn't call his name, so therefore he must not be good. But I think that he's got a niche in this offense, I think. And if they need it, they'll use him. Right now, they play behind the sticks a lot. The offensive line gets penalized a lot lately for holds and offsides and stuff like that. So even with CJ back there, it's 2nd and 10. It's 3rd and 7. It's not 2nd and 2 or 3rd and 1 where you can use him. And I feel like he's getting a bum rap on the thing.
Guess how many snaps Dameon Pierce played on Sunday? Lower, it's 1. Dameon Pierce played 1 snap against the Titans. And I think that's indicative of the, Bobby Slowick or somewhere in the Texans organization, they've realized that maybe he doesn't fit what they want to do. And like I said, I don't think it's a talent thing. I don't think that, I think people are going to be frustrated if Dameon Pierce makes his way out of Houston because he's going to perform well wherever he goes. But it's just a matter of not adjusting to fit what his strengths are and make them work in this offensive scheme, I would say, personally.
But I will say this. I don't necessarily, and I've seen this on Twitter too, I've seen this around in some different places. I don't necessarily always agree with Bobby Slowick's player selection for some of these plays. I believe Dameon Pierce could be great in pass pro. I believe if you were going to give Singletary a blow and you wanted to use Dameon Pierce to pass protect, so be it. Do that. You just don't have to not use him because, okay, I don't want to throw him the football or I'm not going to hand him the ball on first down. I think sometimes when we talked about the Tank Dell thing, I didn't necessarily agree with the player personnel there. When we talk about using Dare on third down, if it's 3rd and 22 and you're going to run a draw anyway, they probably should have used him a couple times. That would have kept Devin Singletary's legs fresh. Now, it didn't matter. The win is the win. We're good. On to the next week. We'll probably see more Dameon Pierce next week. I think that the Cleveland defense is stout, but I think that they're going to try to run on this team to protect whoever's behind center, under center. And I think we're probably going to get, 10 carries for Dameon Pierce next week.
I have to agree with you. I think that I don't think they're done with him. I think that his usage against the Titans was, as you said, more a product of field position. And so we'll probably see a little more of him. And thank God, since you'll be there. But you bring up Case Keenum or whoever's going to be behind center, but Case Keenum played this past week, and Case had a great game. I thought it went incredibly well. I shouldn't say it wasn't amazing. It was just a great game. It had its rough start, and I think it was probably about half a quarter into the game before Davis Mills' name was trending on Twitter, which is probably a record for the backup quarterback trending on any team ever. I don't know. But to me, you have to see it through. And I said that all Sunday. I was someone who thought Davis Mills was going to start, but if you've chosen to start Case Keenum, you have to see it through at least a half and give him time to settle in. And they did, and they liked what they saw, and they sent him back out in the second half, and it was to their benefit. The Texans definitely made the right call. And we got to see our small sample of Davis Mills late in the game. Not exactly what I thought I was going to see. I think it was the right call putting him in there. Keenum's arm strength was shown a couple plays prior on a deep pass to Noah Brown. And in that situation, you definitely want to go with the guy who has more arm strength. But looking at what Keenum did, what grade would you give him, and how important do you think he was relative to Davis Mills, or what we might have gotten from Davis Mills in this game?
First off, I feel for Davis Mills because he was in an impossible situation. Hey, go in there and throw a Hail Mary. And you want this thing to be the one ball I throw all day. I need this to be perfect. And the line didn't do, the line didn't do him any favors. He was running for his life immediately. And it's four-man rush. And it's just so of course, social media went for him. Twitter came for him. It was well, no wonder he didn't play. But those same people, when Case throws the pick six, are going, put in Davis Mills. And they were a little quiet towards the end of the game. I'd give Case a solid C. I don't think that, I don't think it went bad, but I don't think it went well either. I mean, there was plays that he missed. There was throws. Obviously, the pick six was, right at the guy. I mean, he walks it in.
Now, do you think on that pick six that it was on him or that it was on Dare? Because it looked like Case was looking for a certain route and that Dare cut the wrong way. Some might say. I don't know. I don't know what actually happened on that play.
I'm still trying to understand why Dare was in there. Goes back to that personnel thing. The last thing I need is my third string quarterback throwing to my third string running back on 3rd and 10. You know what I mean? I probably need to go to a guy that's at the top of the depth chart or whatever, and that play was just doomed from get go. I'm sure Dare was probably going the wrong way, and I'm sure that he would tell you, no, 75x out, read whatever, blah blah blah, is to the middle of the field. And then Case would be like, oh, my bad. How many times has he ran it? They're both going to have the same argument. It's just tough. So tough. And I watched that and I saw that and I'm like, this is going to be a long day. This is going to be ugly. And then they just grinded it out. And now from that point on, it was all Texans and it was just a great game.
I agree with you on the C. I think the only two plays that redeem that, though, and make it a C plus range grade are the two plays back to back to set up the Texans, to go into overtime between that scramble and pass to Dalton Schultz, which honestly, that was an ill-advised throw that Dalton saved him on. And then the scramble to throw the pass to Noah Brown for the touchdown were both, plays that I think the results helped Keenum's grade out. I think at the end of the day, he was asked to do a lot. Since 2014, he's 3-0 as a Texan starting quarterback, though. So, I mean, he's ready-made for it. Let's not talk about 2013, though. It's wild that he played in 2013. That was his rookie year, 8 losses, didn't get a single win. That disappointed me. I remember that because I, much like anyone, wanted Case Keenum to be that guy for the Texans. But I'm glad that he's gotten a chance to actually do that now and be an important part of what has been one of the better seasons in recent Texans history. And one of those reasons, whether people want to believe it or not, is the improvement to the Texans' run defense. And that's what I want to talk about next. You talked about how Ka'imi Fairbairn is with the field goals that were made, the bar none MVP. There's not another singular player on the field that has a strong case outside of, depending on who you ask, Devin Singletary, maybe a couple of the defensive players. But if there was one entity that has a case for MVP as a whole, it's the defense. The defense locked down the Titans, which admittedly is not hard to do. They were the 27th ranked offense going into this game, but they did it nonetheless. They swarmed. They got to Will Levis. Derek Stingley had some important stops and also bailed out Jalen Petrie a couple of times. Petrie redeemed himself a couple of times. What do you make of this defensive performance? Is it a product of the team that the Texans were playing, or do you think that this defense is getting geared up to be that defense that it needs to be for a postseason run?
Simply, I think it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a picture of their leader. You know what I mean? They are going as D'Amico Ryans is going, and I mean he is just making them believe in themselves. He's coaching them up. You look at some of the guys that come in. Jimmy Ward went down on the third play, and all they did was bring another guy in and lock up. I mean, this had no. They're missing so many players. They're missing Cashman, who's been so good, one of the leading tacklers on the team. Grenard was on an island by himself because on the other side of the football, his Robin to his Batman or Batman to his Robin was out. So you start looking at these things and it's just it's unbelievable. And they potentially got better. They claimed. Did you hear about the waiver claim they made?
It was Tart, right? From the
Tier Tart. Yeah. So defensive tackle, position need. I think that's great. You know what I mean? This guy was a freak athlete for the Titans, stud for a little bit, and then supposedly was unmotivated, gets cut. So who better to motivate him than D'Amico Ryans? Everybody they picked up off the street has been good. Des King was on the couch.
I would argue Myjai Sanders, I believe I said that right, who stepped in and played a lot of the snaps that Will Anderson would have played. I didn't think he did bad. He occupied space, but he was not getting around or getting in there, getting much done from what I saw. But no, for the most part, yeah, all the players they pick up off the street, they're elevated. I mean, Derek Barnett on the flip side of that had a sack. John Grenard is 6th on the all-time list for Texans sacks, or sorry, 5th. Yeah. JJ Watt has 3 of those, and one of them is Mario Williams for seasons as a sack, getter for the Texans. So incredible to see. That begs the question: how do you think D'Amico Ryan's Coach of the Year case is looking right now?
Man, there's some really good coaches out there, and I hate that for him because in any other season, it's like runaway. But when you look what Dan Campbell's doing in Detroit and how bad that team's been for however many decades, like they're going to win that division, which they never win. It's going to be tough. He's like right there. Like I think Vegas has him as like the third best odds. It's like Campbell, and then I think it's who's the other one? I think it's the coach for the Eagles. I think.
Geez. As soon as you said it, I immediately lost track of what his name is.
And then it's D'Amico, and then Shane Steichen, and then somebody else.
Steichen's made a great case, and that's the reason why the last game of the season could very well be the Texans playing to be in the playoffs. Like that could very well be the case. So
I hope you're wrong, but it could be.
I hope so too. I'd hate to go to Indianapolis, a place where the Texans have historically played awful, and try and play what should be an awful Indianapolis team and try and get the win. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're talking about Texans Titans right now. No, I think the difference for me is that Dan Campbell last year, he took steps to get his team ready, and D'Amico Ryans came in, granted with a lot better, whether people wanted to admit it or not, the draft position, the capital, everything that was going on when he took over the Texans was in his favor. But D'Amico has taken a team that was projected to win 5.5 games. D'Amico has in one season turned a team that was the second worst in the league to a potential playoff. I think if the Texans make the playoffs, D'Amico has a stronger case than Dan Campbell based off of circumstance. But I think Dan Campbell's been kind of set up to win that award for so long that this is his payout year. So it's just, like you said, it's bad timing. I think that any other year, D'Amico Ryans clearly wins Coach of the Year. But like I said, were we really concerned about that, or do we want to go out in there and win some playoff games? Let's get to the playoffs first.
D'Amico would tell you that he could care less about those awards. CJ
100%.
would tell you that he could care less about those awards. Like they just want to get better every day. And I believe that if it's not this year, it'll be next year or the year after that. I can't see this team really regressing because you're just adding more talent around incredible talent already, and they're going to have tons of money to spend. So like, T. Higgins is a free agent out there. If you needed a one and you watched Cincinnati play this past week, T. Higgins could be that dude.
I would venture to say, and this is the last thing I'll say before we try and kind of bring it to a close, but T. Higgins, love him. I've had him in Dynasty Fantasy for a while, but with his injury history and with the ease that he's had to play the position relative to having Jamar Chase on his team, I'm not fully sold on him as a wide receiver one. I do think he'd be great for the Texans, just as a complement with, Nico being a 1A, 1B kind of thing going on there, because he'd have that draw from the other side to kind of help him out. Or maybe on another team that has, or I don't know. If he got sent and packed up and sent to the Chiefs, I don't know how that goes with him being the only guy. Like, I don't know. Pat Mahomes is throwing to garbage cans at this point, though. So
I like that kid, Rashee Rice. I think he's going to be good.
I think he has potential. But like Kadarius Toney, like I don't know. There's Travis Kelce's fallen off a little bit. I think he can still recover. I think he's just having a bad stretch. But I don't know, man. I thank God that the Texans wide receiver room is a lot better than people thought it was going to be. That the potential panned out, because that's what it was. It went from potential to like a kinetic wide receiver room for all my science nerds out there. But yeah, Tom, any last thoughts before we close out this episode?
I just want to say it was an amazing win. I can't believe that the Texans are where they are right now. I mean, yes, they've lost some bad games, but they've won some really good ones. And I mean, if you'd have said beginning of the season, if you'd have said halfway through the season, they're going to be 8-6 and tied for the division lead this in December, I would have said, whatever drugs you're using, you should probably stop because it's bad for your health. There's no way I saw them doing what they're doing right now. So I'm just enjoying all of this. This is awesome. I can't express as enough how cool it is to have quality football back in Houston. You know, I know it seems like forever, but I mean, I'm ready for it now.
I'm ready for it too, and I didn't even endure the Oilers. I'm just here, a fresh-faced Texans fan from day one that is just ready to see them finally realize the potential that they've had at several points in the history of the franchise. So I'm here for it. I'm here. I'm also here for the beating of the Titans in the Oilers uniforms. I may not have a deep connection to the Oilers as of an organization or as their history, but seeing that storyline play out, I'm a football fan. Obviously, it was nice to see. So yeah, all right. You can find Tom at Third Coast Tom on X. I am at M1 Texans fan on all my social media. There's plenty of it. I'm not going to mention all of it. And that's also how you can find the YouTube channel. If you're not watching, or if you're listening, or if you are watching, you can listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you would like to do it that way on your drive into work instead of watching it on your phone. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And we appreciate y'all showing up and supporting the podcast. So until next time, Vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Pick the handoff. Stroud looking. Stroud.